So why is there so much buzz today, Monday, October 7th, in the SPAC world? Because today is the day that the new deadlines go into effect that no longer allow any SPAC listed on Nasdaq or the New York Stock Exchange to get an extension beyond 36 months to complete a business combination, or as we say, a de-SPAC. So, as you likely know, prior to today, a SPAC on Nasdaq had 36 months to complete a business combination or request a panel hearing and ask for an additional 6-month extension for a total of 42 months. Whereas a SPAC on the New York Stock Exchange also had 36 months to enter into a business combination, but under its exchange rules could not offer a similar 6-month extension, thereby resulting in this 6 months advantage for Nasdaq. So, what did the New York Stock Exchange do? Well, they did what any reasonable competitor would do and petitioned the SEC to allow them to grant an automatic 6-month extension beyond the original 36 months for all New York Stock Exchange listed SPACs, basically trying to level the playing field and begin being more competitive with Nasdaq. However, without boring you to death about all of the back and forth and all of the details, the quick and dirty summary is this. The New York Stock Exchange basically said to the SEC that automatically delisting a SPAC in their proposal with a executed business combination agreement at the 36-month mark is not in the best interest of shareholders, and an additional automatic 6-month extension is appropriate. Not surprisingly, the SEC disagreed. This prompted Nasdaq to say their piece on the proposed NYSE automatic 6-month extension and even caused the OTC markets to somehow get involved and weigh in against this proposal. Now, obviously, this is a very important rule for management and de-SPAC deal teams, and as they go through this business combination process, they set their goals, determine their timelines. But what is less obvious, and this is where things get really interesting, is how the delisting of a SPAC will affect their ability to relist on Nasdaq after getting the automatic boot to the OTC markets at the 36-month mark. Keep in mind, a New York Stock Exchange SPAC cannot automatically relist on the NYSE after getting downgraded to the OTC markets because the NYSE, unlike Nasdaq, takes the position that a shell merger on the OTC, even if it was a SPAC 5 minutes ago, must season for at least 12 months prior to making an application to relist on the New York Stock Exchange. Because of this, we expect to see a number of former NYSE SPACs relisting on Nasdaq from the OTC markets, which seems to give Nasdaq an advantage again over the New York Stock Exchange, which was the thing that the NYSE tried to avoid in the first place when proposing this original 6-month extension in the rule to the SEC in order to level the playing field, but potentially making things worse. Talk about coming full circle here. Also, there are some key things that I think deal teams need to remember about relisting on Nasdaq as a SPAC. And that is, if a SPAC is delisted and then completes a de-SPAC on the OTC markets and then immediately applies to relist on Nasdaq, the company will need to meet Nasdaq's initial listing standards for operating companies. That said, we expect most companies to apply for listing on the Nasdaq global markets because you can qualify there without meeting the typical $5 million shareholder equity requirement. Second, you need to be careful with which merger structure is chosen for the de-SPAC transaction on the OTC markets in order to not suffer unnecessary delays or potentially a fatal flaw to the transaction. We don't have to get into all of this right now and all of the details, but generally there are 3 merger structures, which I will cover in an upcoming update, where 2 of them are treated as new registrants with Nasdaq, meaning it's akin to like an IPO listing, and one of them you will need to actually rely on the OTC markets trading to qualify. Despite these changes, I continue to believe that the SPAC format for listing is still a viable option for issuers, and that we will continue to see more of these transactions, especially in the micro and small cap world. So just to recap, starting today, October 7th, SPACs will no longer get a 6-month extension from Nasdaq to complete their business combinations. Instead, they will automatically get delisted to the OTC markets, just like the New York Stock Exchange SPACs. If they apply to get relisted in connection with the de-SPAC, they will need to satisfy the more stringent initial listing requirements, even if they choose the Nasdaq Global Markets, which is free from a shareholder equity requirement. When structuring the de-SPAC transaction, it is crucial to take into account the way Nasdaq will view the combined entity and the listing application. It will view it as either a new registrant with no trading history or as a registrant where certain trading volume on the OTC markets will be required to get relisted on Nasdaq. Again, I'm going to cover these structures in a future update. So reach out to me or any of my partners for more details or any questions. As always, let me know your thoughts and comments on any or all of what we discussed here today.